Good morning, and welcome to the Alameda Connection on KCSM HD2. I'm your host, Scott Piehler. Spend any time at all in Alameda and you'll soon realize that Alameda has a thriving beer culture. From the grain being malted at Admiral Maltings to a bar stool at your favorite watering hole, beer is part and parcel of the Bay Area's island city. In a year that has seen more American breweries close than open, one Alameda brewery has discovered a formula for continuing and expanding success. Oddly enough, beer is only a small part of that success story. I sit down with Kevin Scoles, the Chief Revenue Officer of Almanac Beer Company, whose main taproom here in Alameda is now known as Almanac Adventureland, one of the most dog and family-friendly places you'll ever want to visit. You'll enjoy my conversation with Kevin Scoles of Almanac this morning on the Alameda Connection. Good morning, Kevin, and welcome to the Alameda Connection.
Morning, Scott. Thanks for having me.
My pleasure. Let's start with the history of Almanac, founded in 2010 by Jesse Friedman and Damian Fagan.
We actually refer to the date as 2011. Sometimes you'll look back on Almanac's origin story and you might see 2010 listed, you might see 2011 listed. So why is that? The first Almanac beer started aging on oak in the summer of 2010.
Okay.
But that beer wasn't actually released to the marketplace until May 29, 2011. So that's the date we use to celebrate our anniversary. But I think it also speaks to the company's founding story and what Damien and Jesse were looking to accomplish. Here we were in the summer of 2010. We're in the Bay Area where there's any number of really fantastic farm-to-table restaurants. Thank you, Alice Waters, just a stone's throw from the brewery. And you would go into these restaurants, you could sit down and learn about where your lettuce was grown, where your protein was raised. A bottle of wine would show up. You'd learn some about the terroir from the grapes. Even though there were great craft breweries in the area, the fact that beer was an agriculture product and only as good as the sum of its ingredients was really lost on consumers and a lot of restaurateurs alike. Almanac's original premise was always to draw that one-to-one connection between ingredient and beer. Right. And a great beer, just like a really great jazz composition or a really delicious meal, is only going to be as good as the sum of its parts. And in fact, our name Almanac comes from the Farmer's Almanac.
Okay, very good.
The Farmer's Almanac is an annual that's come out every year since the 1800s, essentially a reference to weather patterns. A lot of people will call it the Farmer's Bible. Right. It'll let farmers know when to plant their crops, supplement water, so on and so forth. So the name sounded cool, but also was a direct reference to farms and the fact that ingredients matter in
Was
beer.
it named for the Farmer's Almanac or the Old Farmer's Almanac? Because the Farmer's Almanac just said they're shutting down. The Old Farmer's Almanac continues.
It was named for the Old Farmer's Almanac.
Yep. Very good. So the first tap room was in 2016 in San Francisco's Mission District. Where was the beer made?
Great question. And, really for Almanac's first 7 years of existence, 95 to 97% of the beer we produced was all oak-aged sour beer. And at that point, we were brewing our wort at Hermitage in San Jose, and we had a facility right next door where we would age the beer on oak, a combination of barrels and some big giant oak foeders before the beer would then be fruited and packaged. So at that point, we didn't have our own brew house. We had a high demand for the beer and really wanted to have an outlet where we could bring Almanac's beer directly to consumers. And that's where the tap room in San Francisco came
Now,
from.
you had a bunch of awards and recognition in between that time. Then you get up to 2018 and you wind up with the Alameda location. What led to that?
First thing was Ron, our neighbor at Admiral Maltings, and Ron had found this amazing building on Alameda Point. The building was a little too big for what they needed, so he reached out to Damien and Jesse, said, I found this really cool historic building, built out of 90% redwood, exposed beams. The history is really palpable when you're on site at the location, and wanted to know if they'd be interested in splitting the building. So they went down and looked at it. At that point, it was storing like some old circus and carnival equipment on the inside. So a little bit of a creepy walkthrough from what I understand. just as you experience when you're there today, when you walk inside and look up at the rafters and see this redwood that's original from the early 1940s, the history really kind of smacks you in the face, and you really feel the soul of the building itself. We really believed in the vision for Alameda Point of what was to come.
How long did it take to get the production facility in Alameda up and running?
It was about a year and a half.
And what happened to the San Francisco taproom?
So they coexisted for about 6 months. We started serving beer in Alameda in early 2018, essentially January, February of 2018. At a certain point, it just made sense to focus on one location for us. The initial thought behind San Francisco was giving Almanac a location to bring our products directly to consumers. Then we found this great opportunity in Alameda. So once we pivoted to that, that's really where we wanted to focus all of our efforts.
Okay, and now you've added the Oakland Clubhouse. How did that come about?
The West Oakland Clubhouse actually came about through a great relationship we have with our landlord here in Alameda, who was developing this project in West Oakland that was going to be a food hall. And there are a number of these popping up throughout the Bay Area that have been very well received by consumers. And it gives folks an opportunity to show up to one location, try 6 or 7 or 8 different food options. Then, of course, with Prescott Market, you could also pop into the Almanac West Oakland Clubhouse. And for us, it was a great opportunity, not too far away from our home base in Alameda. And we like that because we really like leaning into the East Bay. For us, the word craft means community, and being able to set up locations at a community that we could really call home and make our space so much more than a brewery. In fact, we don't put the name taproom on the side of any of our locations anymore because we feel like it's, for lack of better words, just such a cookie cutter term and doesn't really describe much about a location. Their taprooms are almost a dime a dozen these days as you go throughout the Bay Area and really all of California. So we always want to give our locations a name, a theme that people could lean into and kind of gravitate towards. So that's where the West Oakland Clubhouse came from.
I was there at a Ballers game, and you have a great relationship with the Oakland Ballers. And I was chuckling on my way over here today because I said, one of the great things about the West Oakland Clubhouse is that if you have your Ballers ticket in hand, it's $1 off. If they win, it's $2 off. You must have sold a lot of discounted beer this year because the Ballers had a pretty darn good season.
We did. They had a historic season. In fact, the best season by any professional baseball team in terms of winning percentage in any league. And what an amazing thing to see come to fruition. And of course, we were driving by Raimondi Ballpark every day as we're developing the West Oakland Clubhouse. Here is this historic location where Frank Robinson played and Ricky Henderson played and Kurt Flood played, and now they're revitalizing it and bringing professional baseball back to Oakland in a spot that has so much history. It's just been great to see that come to life and in a way be a part of that.
The partnership is really strong because I cannot tell you the number of advertisements I see that's got a Ballers logo and an Almanac can on it. How did that come about?
Really came about organically. And as we're moving into Prescott Market and kind of setting down our roots in West Oakland, we naturally met our neighbors, the Ballers, and saw a real opportunity to work together. And for us, when we create a collaboration project, it's something that we want to resonate with not only our consumers, but the fan base that we're creating that project with as well. So we developed a beer called Ballers Love, which is essentially a signature can and a signature label that really leans into Ballers branding and Raimondi Ballpark and West Oakland and leans into the community aspect that's so important for us in the area.
And your community aspects with your collaborations, you've had a few over time that I have just absolutely adored. I'm going to start by telling you my introduction to Almanac. Prior to living in Alameda, 2021, my wife and I literally did a lap around the country, and we were here in Alameda for 5 weeks. We were on the island for 5 weeks and went to Almanac 5 times. One of my favorite things that I bumped into then was Crispy Girl Pilsner. I remember the last time it came out, you could get a discount by bringing in feminine hygiene supplies. Yeah. Not exactly something you think of in the usual relationship with a brewer. How do you focus on that kind of community relationship?
We call it a cause per quarter. So every quarter we like to focus on a different cause-driven beer. When we're doing those beers, typically we like to do something that really has wide distribution, that we could help shine a light on the charity or cause that we're working with, and then also donate a portion of those proceeds back to that cause. And I think, like many companies out there, we're a company made up of human beings that have things we're passionate about, and really the causes we support come down to the team internally and things that are important to us and things that we want to shine a light on. I think another great example of that was Q1 of last year. We released a beer called Future is Fluid.
Oh, yes.
And we work with the Pink Boots Society on that beer. And Pink Boots does amazing work promoting diversity, equity, and inclusion within the brewing industry, specifically with women and non-binary folk. And then our longest standing cause beer is in partnership with the Oakland LGBTQ plus community center. And every May and June, we take our most popular beer, Love Hazy IPA, which is 45% of our production. Almost half of our production is this one beer. And we switch the label to a pride label on it. And we donate a portion of the proceeds of every can sold back to the Oakland LGBTQ plus community center. And we're actually their longest standing small business partner with that program, now going into its 7th year, collectively with our customers who support the product, because really the donation's driven by every can that's purchased. A certain amount of money goes to them, but we've raised close to $50,000 over those 7 years.
Now, I have to ask you, mainly because I think it's just about my wife's favorite product that you've ever done. Is Beyond the Binary ever coming back? That was delicious.
Beyond the Binary. Oh, what a great beer. For me, a desert island beer is any sort of dark lager. And, we probably will bring Beyond the Binary back at some point. We are starting to reintroduce things now, just because there's so many fun labels and great recipes out there that we've developed over the 14 years of being in existence, that it's fun to bring some of those hits back. So I think that's a great suggestion for one of those to add to the brew schedule.
I realized a while back I was actually the first retail customer to buy a 4-pack of Hugs.
I love it. That's a beer that I hold dearly. So much has changed in craft beer since Almanac started. One thing you're not finding a lot of breweries introducing these days are Hefeweizens. And here is one of our latest core beers we've added to our lineup. And it is just a German style Hefeweizen. And a lot of people might say, gosh, why are you doing that when everybody's releasing maybe a smoothie sour or, some new innovation of an IPA? And for us, a term that we've started to think about is the other 90%. And, for years in craft beer, all there was growth. And craft was taking market share year after year after year. And then that plateaued at about 10 to 12% of the market share. And we started to think to ourselves, gosh, why is that? And we think that's because we naturally brewed styles and marketed beers to really 10 to 12% of the consumer base, and kind of forgot about those other 90% of consumers that were out there. So a beer like Hugs is something we introduced to speak to the other 90%. Everybody knows what a Hefeweizen is. My mom, who doesn't enjoy craft beer at all, she goes to a restaurant and they've got a Hef on tap. She's going to order it. It's just something that consumers know what to expect. It's easy drinking, it's delicious, and those are the type of beers we like to lead with. And a name like Hugs, who can't gravitate towards that in itself.
No, I think one of my favorites got caught up in the other 90%. When I realized that True had changed from a Kolsch to an American lager, I was sad for a couple of days.
Yes, you weren't alone, Scott. Believe me, those are always difficult decisions to make as you're looking at bandwidth and brew schedules and what you should focus on. And True Kolsch specifically was our number 2 beer for years and years and years. Certainly that started to change over time. It was something that we felt was ready for a refresh. So really we changed the yeast strain on that beer, same recipe otherwise outside of that. So drinks pretty similarly. It's what we like to call a beer flavored beer. Crisp, clean, easy drinking.
At the time I discovered you, Phil Emerson was still your head brewer. You had a barley wine on tap called Lochnar. And I went to the beer tender and I said, somebody in the company a fan of the animated film Heavy Metal? And she looked at me and said, you are the first person to get that reference. Phil is a huge fan of that movie. I said, okay. And then when I moved out here, I actually brought with me a piece of animation art that was used in that film, and I gave it to Phil. He has now he has a pencil sketch of Tarna from the movie Heavy Metal. And so that was a great connection. Of course, now Phil's off at Olfactory now. That's right.
Yeah.
Who's the brewmaster now?
Joao Alameda, who lives here in the city of Alameda. And Joao, not only an amazing, talented brewer, spent years working at Anchor, has so many great relationships here in the Bay Area, and is a great person. And for us, that's always the starting point, when you're looking for a coworker, is someone who's just a great, genuine, nice person. And Joao embodies that, and then also happens to be a really talented brewer.
I've had beers from Almanac where I've gone, this is not to my taste, but I've never had anything from Almanac where I'm going, this isn't well done. I mean, there's a big difference.
Appreciate that.
Since 2022, I've watched your gradual and intentional pivot, as you say, no longer a tap room. It's now Almanac Adventureland. And I want to go into something I saw as I was preparing for the interview, and it was Beer Aficionado on Instagram. Coming through a period where it's the first year in ages that more breweries have closed than have opened. And he came up with the idea of there were 12 points of why this is happening. I'm just going to run them real fast and just get your reaction to how you see that. Problem one, and these are all problems that came in chronological order. Problem one, there became a hype cycle with beer. What was what's the newest, niftiest thing? Then you had a massive expansion. Breweries were everywhere. Then the globals started buying the small guys. Then for a while, everything and its brother was a hazy IPA. Sheer number of breweries went to unsustainable. You wound up with a reliance on what's coming next instead of that go-to, that core. There became no next big thing. Then COVID, then price pressure, then people started to burn out. Then you had the rise of seltzers and new choices, and then finally an overall downturn in the consumption of alcohol and a look at moderation. How do you think he did on picking that out?
I think he did well. I think he nailed a number of things. I think there are some things that maybe should be on that list that are not on that list. Manufacturing anything is a very difficult thing to do, just in terms of profit margins and making the numbers line up. Then you add to that manufacturing anything in California, and it gets a little bit more difficult. And then you add to that the 3-tier system that is part of beer distribution, where you don't sell directly to bars. For the most case, there are some self-distributing breweries out there, but you sell to a distributor, and then they sell in turn directly to a bar or a grocery store chain. There's not great margins in the industry, and there certainly never has been. And that makes it to where when you do hit challenging times, there's not a lot of wiggle room for a lot of people, unless you're running your business in a way that a business should be ran on the back end of things. When you hit those tough times, there's no spot for a lot of people to go. And I think there's a lot of symptoms there that he had mentioned, and a lot of those things are true. I also think there really has never been a better time in beer, and especially to be a consumer. The amount that brewers have learned over the last 15, 20 years as a whole. Scott, as an avid consumer, there's no lack of great beer out there to enjoy. And as we looked at our own business, we realized, gosh, great beer isn't what you need to shoot for to be a successful brewery. Great beer is what you need just to open your doors and operate. And then it's everything else that differentiates you. And if you're just relying strictly on the quality of the beer and the beer being delicious, then you're going to have a difficult time surviving. The beer needs to be delicious. That is a given. But you need to do all those other things that brings in the community and consumers, attracts customers for you on an ongoing basis.
I had Shemaine Wofford of Vinyl Wine Bar on the show, and she brought up what I thought was a very good point. She said that her goal was not to be the best wine bar. It was to be your favorite wine bar. And I thought that was an important distinction. I see it every time I go by or go to Almanac. A lot of people, it is their third space. It is their favorite space. And like you say, the quality of the beer, that's just step one.
We use the term often that we used to want our beers to be the moment. We wanted people to crack open this barrel-aged sour, pour it into a glass, pass it around the room, have it warm up, discuss how it changes and evolves as they're consuming it. Now, we want our beer to be part of the moment. So we want people to be enjoying whatever they're doing and just happen to have an Almanac beer with them.
It's not that you lack for bona fides. I mean, 2022 took a gold at the Great American Beer Festival. But now I can see that change because if you go to your website, when you talk about us, literally the word beer, I counted, does not appear until word 82. And it's all about the experience. You will read online sometimes, and I'll get into beer discussion groups on Facebook or whatever. There's always somebody complaining about something. You'll get into the kids and breweries argument. It's never bothered me. I'm used to English-Irish pub culture. It's a family space. Y'all have not only not minded it, you are all in.
Yeah. And that for us has been us recognizing the consumer instead of vice versa. And that kind of boils down to our beer recipes, but also how we present the property to people. And as we mentioned earlier, we moved to Alameda in 2018. What we saw to start to develop, especially as we came out of COVID, is that you go to the brewery on a Saturday and it's not a typical craft beer crowd. Right. And what does that mean? It's not people that all look and talk like me and, go to the spots that you and I enjoy. So often it was a snapshot of the community. It was old retired couples. It's young people on a first date, it's young families, and everything in between. It was every ethnic and racial background. As we started to look around, we started to think, gosh, we really want to embrace this aspect. And a big part of our customer base was families on the island that were coming out to support us. So making sure that they feel welcome. And that's a big thing for us at any of our spaces, is making sure everybody feels welcome and that it's a welcoming space. And that goes with the environment that we build, the way that we treat hospitality, as far as how our team approaches guests when they're on site, and everything in between.
Speaking of events and groups that come, you do host a bunch of events. How many wedding receptions do you folks do?
At least 2 to 3 a month. Pretty much every Saturday, the Barrel Hall is booked out for either, sometimes it's a wedding, sometimes it's a celebration of life, sometimes it's somebody like Airbnb coming and doing a buyout for their team members. We've worked with the Golden State Warriors and done an annual holiday event with them. So baby showers, believe it or not, I would say our most booked event between the different event spaces are baby showers that we have on site. At least 2 to 3 baby showers per week we're doing.
How in the world do you wind up being the event host for the Belgian Economic Mission?
Great question. We've got a great relationship with the local Chamber of Commerce. Shout out to Madeline, who does an amazing job. And that really was an opportunity that they presented to us as the Belgium Economic Alliance was coming out to California, making a number of spots, and they were looking for a spot in the East Bay to set up and to share ideas, meet passionate local business leaders here in the East Bay. We were lucky enough that they chose all.
You've definitely found a formula that works, even down to changing the name, Adventureland. Where did that come from?
That came from all the changes that we made on site. What came first, the chicken or the egg? I guess in this case, it was the egg, because as you mentioned, we're a very family-friendly facility. So what does that mean? We've got 8,000 square foot beer garden that's all filled with AstroTurf. It has 2 sandboxes in it. We've got arcade games. We've got giant projection screens. We do wrestling nights. We do movie nights. We've partnered with the Hornet and had them bring actual fighter jet cockpit into the brewery, into the Top Gun movie night. There's so many different things happening at the brewery, and you really never know what to expect. You might show up in October for our Oktoberfest event and see a few people in the beer garden on stilts. For Christmas, we're actually opening up a Christmas tree lot this year. So we felt like the name Adventureland was just all-encompassing and caught people's eyes and attention and just sounded a lot cooler than taproom.
Oh, and by the way, thanks for adding pinball machines, because I really needed another reason to show up. What keeps people coming back, in your opinion?
think hospitality is first. People come back to spaces they feel comfortable and are treated well at. I want to dive into that community word again, because people enjoy coming on property. You head out with some family or friends, and you might see 10 other people there that you know, coworkers or neighbors or friends on site. And in many ways, it feels like going to the beach. When you go to the beach, everybody is there to have a great time. There's people there with different backgrounds, different upbringings, but the one common draw is everybody is there to enjoy themselves. And that feeling becomes palpable. And that's very much the feeling you get when you come to Adventureland. On a typical Saturday, if the weather's great, we're going to have 2,000 to 3,000 people in one day go through that location. So that energy is something you feel, and it's positive, and it just feels nice to be on site. And I really do think that's what brings people back.
You've got a great relationship with the Scoles folks. And then you're doing different food trucks on the weekends too, right?
We're actually the first brewery in the state of California to officially license our kitchen as a commissary kitchen. Scoles is our on-site partner with both Scoles and Marley G's on-site daily. Every Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, we rotate other food partners in as well. And that's mainly because of demand. There's so many people on site, it'd be impossible for Scoles to handle all those customers. So we bring in some additional help on the weekends.
How's the wrestling going with the folks from Puppet Wars?
The wrestling's going amazing. You know, as we build out different programming, you never really know what to expect until the event happens. And it's been about 1.5 years now. We've partnered with Puppet Wars on these wrestling events we'll do once a quarter. And the first event we did, we had over 350 people jam-packed into the brewery. And it's great because we set the ring up literally in the heart of our production space. So you're surrounded by big fermenters and oak fooders. And then you've got someone jumping off the top of the ropes with an elbow drop. So it's always a fun night. We get return guests coming for it all the time. And we've never done one of those events where we haven't had 300 to 350 people, which is max capacity for us back there. So great time.
You have quite a mutual admiration society with your next door neighbor, Admiral. I even see employees working both places. How's that relationship?
Admiral's foundation and belief, it leans so much into Almanac's story as well, where here we are, both companies that firmly believe that ingredients matter in beer, and malted barley is such a huge part of that. And what Admiral does, purchasing barley that's typically grown between the Fresno and Sacramento regions, so locally grown barley that is then malted here in Alameda and then brewed in a beer here in Alameda. I mean, it doesn't get any more local than that. Local ingredients, a couple local companies coming together to create a delicious product.
How's your relationship with the other breweries on the island?
I think just like every brewery in the state of California, friendly competition. We love having Faction and having Humble Sea and Admiral and the distilleries that are on the base. It only adds to what we do, and we believe we do the same for them.
I have an idea for you. You're welcome to steal it. You can thank me later. If you go from Alameda Brewing to Faction to Almanac, it's a 10K. If you route it so you end at Faction, you can add in Park Station and Humble Sea. So there's a 10K for you.
I like it.
What's your go-to beverage at Almanac?
Adventureland Pilsner would be my current go-to beverage, and it certainly changes depending on the time of year.
You've got a guest coming into town. You have to take them out for 3 different meals. Where are you going?
We're going to start off with Scoles at Almanac because they have the absolute best burger in town. We're going with the blueberry burger. We're going full order of fries, and everybody's leaving happy. We might have to wheel each other out of there. Number 2, we're going to go up the road to Saltbreaker on the weekend when they've got their new outdoor space. We're going to round it out with In-N-Out Burger because you can never not come to Alameda and not get a little In-N-Out Burger, especially for people out of the state.
How can people best keep up with what's going on in Almanac?
Instagram is always best bet. Follow us at Instagram/Almanac Beer.
Kevin Scoles, Chief Revenue Officer of Almanac Adventureland. Thank you so much for spending time with us on the Alameda Connection.
Our pleasure, Scott.
Take care. Thanks again to Kevin Scoles of Almanac for spending time with us this morning here on the Alameda Connection. To find out what's going on at Almanac, you can head to their website, which is almanacbeer.com, or follow them on Instagram. That Instagram handle is Almanac Beer. Coming up next week on the Alameda Connection, we're going to stay out on Alameda Point. Whether it's Shakespeare, the circus, or a photography exhibit, odds are you've attended an event on the Point that is presented by Radium Presents. Well, the folks behind Radium Runway have big plans in store with a 50,000 square foot state-of-the-art performing arts facility on the drawing board. My guest will be Rachel Campos de Ivanov of Radium. We'll talk about what led to the creation of Radium Runway and what the future holds. That's next week on the Alameda Connection. Thanks again to the California Historical Radio Society for providing the interview space for our conversation with Kevin Scoles. And thank you as always to guitarist Bill Hart for our theme music. The song is Beachside Isle and the album is Watch the Sky. I'm Scott Piehler. Talk with you next week, Sunday morning at 8 on the Alameda Connection.